Good morning. All right. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Asheville. I'm Clyde Hardin, current president of our governing board. We are glad you are here, both longtime congregant and first-time visitor. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and even whichever team you might have rooted for in last night's Duke-Carolina game, you are welcome in our faith community. If you're visiting online and want to learn more about us, just click on the link in the chat box. And while you're in that chat box, we invite you to introduce yourself and tell us where you're watching from. We are so glad you're here, each and every one of you. Now let's prepare for worship with today's centering music.
Not to applaud, isn't it? I'm Reverend Cathy Harrington. I'm your interim minister. Interim ministry at its most successful is a ministry of the congregation. While my role as interim minister includes facilitating the transitional work of the congregation, a strong collaboration between minister and congregation is vital to achieve positive, healthy transformation in the life of the congregation. Thus, your Board of Trustees has named a transition team to support and promote this work of interim ministry. The qualities that the trustees considered in inviting members of the transition team included their ability to see the ministry of the congregation as a whole, both the ministry to congregants and to the larger community, their enthusiasm about the interim period and opportunities that it can create for the congregation, their ability to work well on a team, and their willingness to hold conversations in confidence when needed, and then their skill in promoting healthy communication and conflict resolution practices. I invite our board president up to, we're going to commission our transition team.
There are 5 members of the transition team: John Bates, Nancy Bragg, Jensen Gelfond, Julie Ransom, and Buck Schall. I invite John, Julie, and Buck to come up forward here in the sanctuary and join us. And I invite us all to imagine that Jensen and Nancy, who are attending online, are up here with us. These members of our congregation have graciously agreed to serve in this important role as we journey together during this interim time, as part of their continuing service as leaders in this community.
During the interim time, we will focus on the rich heritage of the congregation, its leadership and mission, connections to resources and services that support the church, and the best ways to move forward towards a promising future. Okay.
As members of the transition team, we accept the charge set before us by our church board of trustees to share our insight, our knowledge of the congregation, our organizational skills, and willing hands through the time of transition, to work with the interim minister and encourage congregational members to be involved in the transitional ministry work that awaits us, and to facilitate our congregation's exploration and development, and our preparation for the arrival of our next settled minister.
In my work with you, I pledge to communicate openly and respectfully with this team and to align my priorities with those of the congregation, supporting the work of your goals and your preparation for your next ministry. Now I invite you as the congregation to join in welcoming these transition team members. We, the congregation of UU Asheville,
entrust you as members of the transition team with the sacred task of helping to guide us through this interim period of our congregational life. We honor your wisdom, long-standing experience, and dedication as you provide good counsel and good energy during this transition time. In the spirit of joy and growth, anticipating our bright future together.
May we
all engage together with intention and love in the possibilities that lie ahead during this period of interim ministry.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jean. Thanks.
I'm guessing that pretty much everyone.
I'm not gonna do that yet.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Go back to the chalice lighting. We had to move the commissioning. We had to move the commissioning in our service because Clyde had double booked, and he's with the coming of age kids today. So we did that for him. Thank you.
A Chalice Lighting for When Things Aren't Okay by Reverend Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you, that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend those things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit, and so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love.
Thank you, Julie. Our opening words this morning are by Katie Romano Griffin, invoking the past, present, and future. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion. Let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. And come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. It's really good to be together again. Okay, Claudia's going to introduce our song.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Claudia Jiménez. I serve this congregation as Minister of Faith Development. And before sharing the wisdom story, I'm going to invite us into song. So we're going to be singing Come, Come, Whoever You Are in English and Spanish. So because we haven't gathered in so long, it's been 2 years almost, we're going to practice our Spanish. All right? So I will go over the song with you, and you will say back sentence by sentence. So are we going to have our words? Okay. Ven, ven, ¿cuál eres? Ven. ¿Cuál eres? Ven. Nómada en búsqueda. Si amas la vida. La nuestra es la caravana de amor. Say that again, la caravana de amor. Ven, otra vez ven. You're perfect. Wonderful. Let us sing, and at home, sing your hearts out. All right. Wonderful. It's so nice to hear song in this sanctuary. I think we can get an amen on that. Yes. So this morning, talking about amens, we are going to revisit a little of the Universalist history, which is when we talk about Universalism and Unitarianism by themselves, we're still talking about our Christian heritage in terms of our theology. So this morning we're going to talk about a minister whose name is Reverend Hannah Powell. Does anybody recognize? Oh, amen. One hand. Okay, so before UU Asheville, over 100 years ago, there was a very active Universalist community at Inman Chapel. Have any of you heard of Inman Chapel? Okay. And that is in Haywood County, about a 45-minute drive from Asheville. But it wasn't always so active. In 1921, when Reverend Hannah Powell was invited to serve at Inman Chapel, it was a dying congregation. And one of the things to remember, at that time, it was challenging to be a Universalist. Number one, talking about salvation for all was not welcome. And number two, a lot of their progressive ideas, that everybody was equal, regardless of race, that women deserved the right to vote, and that women could be in leadership roles, including ministry. Well, those things were heretical. So being a Universalist took a little bit of courage and, need I say, rascality of the good kind. And so, despite the challenge, when Hannah Powell was asked to serve in this community, she said yes. And one of the things that she had in her favor was that she had served rural congregations in Maine for over 22 years after graduating from Tufts Divinity School, and she was willing to take the challenge of not only reviving this congregation, but maybe of winning over the skeptics who questioned women in ministry. So at age 55, Reverend Powell arrived in Haywood County. She encountered a logging community that was facing economic hardship. And she could relate to it because she herself grew up in a logging community in Clinton, Maine, where she also experienced economic hardship. And furthermore, she was an amazing preacher. And her leadership re-energized the congregation, bringing Universalists out of the woodwork, so to speak. What did she do to revive this congregation? She started religious education programs for children and adults. Haven't we heard that before? Religious education, religious exploration, faith development, whatever you name it, it is crucial to the health of a congregation. She also started a choir, a women's group, and a young adult group. And this congregation grew. She even made home visits, walking throughout the community, not just visiting the shut-ins or those who were sick, but visiting members of the congregation and building relationship. Now, something really cool about Reverend Powell was that she believed, I mean, it's not like super cool, but I just like the way she phrased it. She believed that social service work was a sacrament and a method of prayer. A sacrament and a method of prayer. And her belief was put into practice when she acquired land and funds to build a community center that was called Friendly House, which opened 8 years after she arrived. And in order to support that ministry, she opened her home to Universalist women who wanted to come and support those efforts, because there were quite a few of them. She started a kindergarten and parent support at Friendly House. She started a summer program for older youth. She started a lending library. She started evening adult education classes. And in one of the sources that I found, it says that she opened the first public health clinic in North Carolina. I don't know if that's true, but that's what one of the sources said. Regardless, she opened a public health clinic. That's pretty amazing 100 years ago. And you might be wondering, you know, during this time of Jim Crow, the Black community was not welcome into Friendly House because of custom and because of Jim Crow. Nevertheless, Reverend Powell opened Faith Cottage, which provided kindergarten and summer enrichment programs to the Black community. And it was under the leadership of Reverend Ruth Dowling. And I wasn't able to find much about her other than this was the ministry she did at the time. Now, this congregation, this Universalist congregation and Inman Church and Inman Chapel were thriving. But then guess what happened? This is like 1910s, 1920s. Friendly House opened 8 years later, 1928, 1929. Great Depression, the Great Depression hit. Contributions dwindled, and then the New Deal created programs that supplanted the type of work that organizations and churches were doing to support community. So eventually, Reverend Powell had to retire. She retired at age 70 after serving this congregation 15 years. And some sources say she never took a vacation, right? She worked super hard. And she was very difficult to replace. I believe there were about 3 ministers that followed after she came, but none of them were able to maintain the congregation. So eventually, Inman Chapel and Friendly House closed. And you can see the outside today. So I'm going to share a picture of what some of the children that she worked with at Friendly House, and then a final picture of the chapel, which has since been renovated. So there is currently no Unitarian Universalist congregation in Haywood County. The Inman Chapel was renovated and is maintained by descendants of the Inman family who use it for family gatherings. And one of the members of one of their committees noted in an interview that when he started school in 1971, there was no kindergarten in his community, and yet this community 100 years ago was so progressive and had a kindergarten. So during this month, when we recognize women's achievements, it is important to remember stories that are not often told. Reverend Powell's vision, passion, and accomplishments not only inspired her congregation, but also supported her community. All of these people, all of these Universalists came out of the woodwork. I wonder what our work and our ministries can do in this time to bring Unitarian Universalists out of the woodwork, because it is through our actions and through our work that the promise of our faith continues. And she showed us that 100 years ago. That is our time for all ages this morning.
So in the center of our service and in the center of our lives, let us pause to honor the silences of the world. Open our hearts to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. There's a lot going on in our world today. I'd like to begin with a prayer called Prayer for Today by Reverend Vanessa Southern. Spirit of life, the one beyond naming and knowing, mystery beyond understanding, what complicated times we live in still. Masks lifting off faces, mouths and noses, and smiles revealed in full sunlight. Travel bans lifted, families reuniting, and plans being made. And most of all, fears and wariness are just beginning to subside with a hope of its receding back like a tide that returns forever to the ocean of time. And then war. A demigod bored by too long by the ravages of the pandemic, an ego in need of frontline drama, the exercise of power insensate to pain of others, death and suffering, to all save his own need for a strange and evil surfeit. Just when our bracing spirits could release and begin again perhaps to trust, just when we could ask joy to rejoin the party, no protective gear necessary, this. Help us whenever we call in dark nights or uncertain times in despair or frustration or wondering again about the future we create and will inherit. Help us to know how to move forward in this time in ways that are compassionate and courageous. Help us live without unnecessary loss, someday making calculations based only on the sacrality of life, of one another. In the spirit of invitation, let us offer up to one another a time of shared silence with space for what each of us needs to be heard and held for this hour. Let us pause for a moment of silence. For all that is our lives, all that we hold and wrestle with, we ask for blessings and a way through with grace and courage. May it be so. Amen. And now it's time for a sharing of our joys and concerns and a candle lighting ritual. If you're in the sanctuary, please come forward to light a candle. And if you are at home, you are invited to write in the chat box any joy or sorrow that you would like to share with the congregation. And we light one last candle for the people of the Ukraine and for Paula Robbins, who died last month. If you have shared a joy, know that this community rejoices with you. And if you have shared a sorrow, know that you are held in love and in care by the members of this church.
Hello, this is Alive in the World by Jackson Browne. Inside my head, I want to live in the world. I want to stand and be counted with the hopeful and the willing, with the open and the strong, with the voices and the darkness, fashioning daylight out of song, and the millions of lovers alive in the world. I wanna live in the world, not behind some wall. I wanna live in the world. Well, I will hear if another voice should call to the prisoner inside me, to the captive of my doubt, who among his fantasies harbors the dream of breaking out and taking his chances alive in the world. To open my eyes and wake up alive in the world. To open my eyes and fully arrive in the world, with its beauty and its cruelty, with its heartbreak and its joy, with its constantly giving birth to life and to forces that destroy, and the infinite power of change alive in the world. To open my eyes and wake up alive in the world. To open my eyes and fully arrive in the world. To open my eyes and wake up alive in the world. To open my eyes and fully arrive in the world.
Hello, I'm Buck Schall with Little Deja Vu, as well as reflection on our time right now. I'm guessing that pretty much everyone throughout history has felt like they were living in an interesting time, and of course to some degree that's always true. However, I really do believe that we are in a special time right now, a time of change in so many ways, in the greater world and right here in our congregation. Our congregation now has the task of charting its new course, not simply in a new person who will be the lead minister, but also what we want to be as a congregation. I believe that requires looking back, really feeling the present, and deciding what we want to do and be in the future.
I'm John Bates. Half smile when your eyes meet those in the sanctuary whom you've not seen for 2 years. If you're joining us online, half smile. Engage your eyes in the service before you, and let that smile widen until you can feel it touching everyone online and in person. Half smile for the good and important work of moving forward in search of how our UU values define our vision for a new ministry. Half smile as we deepen our covenant with our entire ministerial staff in this search. Half smile, knowing of all the wonderful people in our congregation who you'll meet on this journey. Half smile, because you deserve it.
Thank you, John and Buck. So this morning, we're going to take a look back at your history, the early beginnings. Reverend Claudia talked about Hannah Powell and the Universalist beginnings, but the Unitarians were also here early. They made themselves known by the 1930s through itinerant ministers. Dr. Horace Westwood was one of those ministers who devoted a great deal of time in Asheville to the Asheville Unitarian movement. And through his pioneering work, on May 9th, 1950, the Unitarian Fellowship of Asheville was organized with a membership of 10. The fledgling membership met for 2 years in the basement of the First Congregational Church. Their first newsletter of 1951 boasted 22 members and a bank balance of $48.96. With great passion and moral imagination and a great deal of faith, a building fund was created. In 1952, a church school was organized and space was rented at the YMCA, where the church met through December of 1956. The Reverend Daniel Welch came out of retirement to serve as a pastor of the new fellowship in June of 1955. And Effie Poltnoy's apple pie is probably why he stayed. And I want you to know that her son, Art, is here with us today. The importance of apple pie can never be underestimated. The church became active in the community by providing clothing and breakfasts for children in Asheville segregated schools. They formed a chapter of the UN, and they were instrumental in inviting Eleanor Roosevelt to come to speak. The only place that would welcome her, because she insisted on having an integrated audience, was the YWCA, and the attendance was full to overflowing. It had become necessary by 1956 to find a larger home for this crowded congregation. And so they purchased a large home at 120 Vermont Street. And their first service was held January 6, 1957. They continued to grow, and Reverend Dan Welch, who had been retired prior, retired a second time. After 8 years, he served with lots of apple pie. And then Reverend Richard Gross came from New Hampshire to take over the ministry. And they continued their work with the segregated schools. And they also held a memorial for the Unitarian minister James Reed, who was killed in Selma while answering a call from MLK for ministers to join him. Dr. Tracy Pullman and his wife moved from Detroit, Michigan to take over from Reverend Welch in September of 1968. They reached church status in May of 1962. The church was 147 members in 1967 and doubled in size with Reverend Tracy Pullman. And the church welcomed lots of families, young families. Through the generosity of the Robertson family, a lovely piece of property, One Edwin Place, was donated, and a dream come true of building a new church home. The congregation raised money, and they raised more money, and they raised more money. Architect William Moore, a member of the church, designed the new sanctuary, and Sandburg Hall was added with a grant from the Sandburg family, and the church was built. First service held May 7th, 1972, and dedicated officially in October of 1972. And as is normal with any organization, stuff happens. And in 1974, $10,000 was embezzled by the treasurer. I think that ended okay, but I didn't find anything in the history about how that ended. But anyway, nonetheless. In 1974, the young adults at the time decided to name themselves the Unicorn Society. They were the motivating force behind raising money for an improved religious education program, and they remain a close group to this day. The Social Concerns Committee adopted a Vietnamese family, and lots of wonderful programming began to take place. Church life was vibrant and meaningful. In 1973, Reverend Pullman announced his retirement, and in July of '74, Reverend Bill Hammond was called to be the church's next minister. It's interesting, I thought, to note that his offer letter included the annual salary of $15,000, plus a professional allowance. During this time, the church sponsored a Vietnamese family expanded the building. And here's an interesting bit of history, I thought. In 1977, the history note, there's a small note, the Hendersonville coup failed when a group came to the annual meeting with an alternate slate of officers. And it was from that disagreement that that group left and formed the UU Fellowship of Hendersonville in 1981, where they are thriving, which goes to show you conflicts are normal, and they are also opportunity, if we only recognize them that way. So Reverend Jim Brewer was the 5th minister to be called in 1983 to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Asheville, and he served until his retirement in 1990. In the mid-'60s, he had represented the Unitarian Service Committee, and he also was responsible for the development of a program in South Africa, Gandhi's Home, and he served as the interim minister to the Unitarian Church of Cape Town. Interesting man. The membership had reached 360 by 1984. Reverend Bill Huff came to be the interim minister, and Reverend Maureen Kaloran was called as the 6th minister in 1992. The church continued to grow and thrive, and by mid-'90s there were 2 Sunday services, and RE had expanded to 2 sessions. Under the care and expertise of Laurel Amabile, the RE director at the time, the RE program grew in size and complexity. And as the church approached its 50th anniversary, it was becoming clear that Unitarian Universalism in Asheville was becoming a significant force. And there was talk of creating a spin-off church. Maureen also was one of the first to offer a World AIDS Day service and offered space for the Metropolitan Community Church. The church was recognized as a welcoming congregation in 1995. In 2001, Maureen wrote in her annual report, 10 years ago, we were a church of less than 450 members. At that time, they had 614. Sufficient here to say all of UUCA has grown both at home and in terms of its outreach, she wrote. Habitat houses, scholarships, interfaith aids work, teddy bears becoming officially welcoming, and our years of support for Helpmate, cases of soup for monthly contributions, mentoring 5, soon to be 6 interns, supporting the UU Service Committee, and the hundreds of people who had been helped through the discretionary fund. Those are just a few of the things that were happening here in this church and continue, many of them. And she wrote this, one of the most delightful aspects is the way liberal religion is spreading its voice in Western North Carolina, a successful beginning to this second congregation effort, the Unitarian Congregation of Swannanoa River Valley and the congregation in Brevard, and the excitement of Hendersonville's growth and energy. We are a chorus, she writes, rather than a solo. A chorus rather than a solo. This is something we may all choose to celebrate. Following Maureen's retirement, Reverend Neil Shattle came to be an interim, and the congregation called Reverend Mark Ward as its 7th minister in 2004. And you all probably know this history, but there are some of you who don't. Mark refused to sign marriage licenses until same-sex marriage was legally recognized in October of 2014 through a lawsuit in which Mark was one of the plaintiffs. There was the Black Lives Matter resolution, Mother Reed, and the 2017 sanctuary resolution that ended up providing sanctuary for Maria for 8 months. Reverend Lisa Bovey-Kemper was hired as an assistant minister to help meet the needs of a growing congregation. And Lisa officiated the very first legal same-sex marriages in North Carolina on the Buncombe County steps of the courthouse. Lisa's position had been established with funds from a special gift, with the hope that the budget would rise to support the position, but as it turns out, that did not happen. And Lisa did go on to serve as developmental minister, where she is right now, in Greenville, South Carolina. Reverend RE Director Joe Berry left for a position at Meadville Lombard, and Reverend Claudia Jiménez was hired as the Minister of Faith Development, and has also taken on the mantle of social justice, which she does so beautifully. Thank you, Reverend Claudia. I don't have to tell you how valuable her presence is in this congregation and in the community. But this left the congregation without an RE director, and Jen Johnson and Kim Collins have been working together to create the phenomenal program that you see here today. With over 90 children enrolled in RE in the middle of a pandemic, you have to admit that those two are worth their weight in gold. But, and it's a big but, they are being underpaid. They are being paid as if they were religious coordinators working under a religious education director. That is less than even an RE educator is paid. Since its inception, UU Asheville has cared about its children and families. Now it is time for you to be the keepers of this dream. I've put together 102 slides on a slideshow that's going to go pretty fast with some music, and I want you to watch it. And at the end of the service, during the postlude, you will be able to see it again without the music. And I just want you to notice the importance of families in these slides. Okay, thank you.
Well, I hope I see you later, 'cause it's time for me to go. That's my ride, it just pulled over. It sure was good to know you. Go answer your calling. Go and fill somebody's cup. And if you see an angel falling, won't you stop and help them up? 'Cause we are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. Keep each other going, show each other signs. Sometimes you'll stumble, sometimes you'll just lie down. Sometimes you will get lonely with all these people around. You might shiver when the wind blows, and you might get blown away. You might lose a little color, might lose a little faith. We are each other's angels. We meet when it is time. We keep each other going, show each other signs. Thank you for the water. Thought I was gonna die out here in the desert, but you quenched my thirst. Let's break a little bread together. I got a little manna. It was a gift from someone who was passing by and offered me a lift. Now go answer your calling. Go and fill somebody's cup. And if you see an angel falling, won't you stop and help them up? We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going, show each other signs.
So now the task falls onto you to call your 8th settled minister to serve this congregation. By looking back and honoring the remarkable history of this congregation that grew out of a dream of 10 people, the forebearers of this congregation imagined into being 70 years ago, and it was worth sharing what Reverend Maureen wrote in the congregation, to the congregation 22 years ago. She wrote this: I hold in my heart a vision held up by Jim Brewer that of our 100th birthday, when the congregation of that era will look back, I hope with a sense of accomplishment on who we are at that time and what we will do in the 22nd century. Our question today is critical. For what and in what manner do we as a congregation wish to be remembered? The answer to this question must shape what we do now. So the giving campaign is kicking off today. Opportunity is knocking. Opportunity is knocking, and the possibilities are endless. What will you do now? How will you answer? Next Sunday, the transition team and I will share insights of education about the rest of the interim period, but mainly about the search team's selection process. Who will your new minister be? Who do you wish to be will really determine who you will want to call as your next minister. The future is in your hands. So now join me in singing Love Will Guide Us. There's an extra verse that's not on in the hymnal, so please watch the screen. Please rise in body or spirit. Sing.
Our announcement run is slides at the beginning of the service. If you missed them, refer to Thursday's weekly e-news as everything is described there. Our community plate recipient this month is, during the month of March and April, UU Asheville's community plate contributions will be directed to HERS, Health Education Resources, founded and led by Asheville's Yvette Jives. HERS is a patient-centered community resource. It helps women with ovarian cancer and their families navigate the health and societal complexities of this disease, as explained in the following video.
Good morning. My name is Yvette Jives. I'm the founder of HERS Limited Liability. HERS was created as a result of the following factors. Number one, in 2012, I was diagnosed with stage 2 ovarian cancer. Number two, I became aware of the lack of group support, resources, visibility of ovarian cancer, awareness of ovarian cancer, knowledge around ovarian cancer, and education around symptoms associated with ovarian cancer. Number three, through my research, I learned Caucasian women have the highest percentage of being diagnosed with ovarian cancer, while women of color have the highest percentage of dying from ovarian cancer. Women of color also are usually diagnosed in the latter stages of stage 3 and 4 with ovarian cancer. And I wanted to seek out reasons why. HERS offers the following services: healthcare navigation, resource development, patient advocacy, linkage to services, consulting, education, and mentoring. HERS mentors not only for the clients we serve, but also for the families which are impacted by this disease. HERS also focuses on a holistic approach, which includes any diagnosis our clients may have and bring to the table. HERS is committed to being a community partner and to identifying any barriers to care and to creating pathways to have access to quality health care outcomes, and also to create pathways to have access to quality care. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your support. Goodbye.
Okay, regarding our offering, we build on foundations we did not lay. We warm ourselves by fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We profit from persons we did not know. This is as it should be. Together we are more than any one person could be. Together we can build across the generations. Together we can renew our hope and faith in the life that is yet to unfold. Together we can heed the call to a ministry of care and justice. We are ever bound in community. For the gifts of your time, talent, presence, and financial support, we are ever grateful.
We celebrate the work of our UU pioneers in the Southern Appalachian Mountains. They established an ongoing tradition of relationship of congregations and ministers entering into covenant. Transition at UU Asheville means rediscovering our past successes, pausing for a moment to reflect how we are compelled to deepen the covenant with our ministerial staff, and moving forward to a better future that we create intentionally as we seek a new minister.
Following the postlude, you are invited to linger and join us for conversation and virtual connection using the Zoom link provided in this morning's email. And now please rise in body or spirit and let us sing together the closing song. Instead of holding hands, please hold your hands out as like this. Let us bless and keep one another. Let kindness rule in our hearts and compassion in our lives until we meet again. Go in peace and blessed be.